All right, we are doing work here in Charleston, South Carolina. I am right in front of Callie's hot little biscuits right here behind me. And this lady, Carrie Morey, is a hustler. After doing a little research to kind of get to know how she got to where she is, I should mention that it was, again, this was another Randy Weinstein call out. Also, so many people that I lost track told me that I have to talk to Carrie. So we're in good company right now. This is going to be an amazing interview. I'm about to go into it. We're actually recording up the street, Uptown Social. I want to give a shout out to Keith Benjamin and Kara Graves for being so generous with their space. Not just generous with their knowledge as guests, but just letting me continue to do my work with other Charleston guests. So we're here. Things that I want to talk about. She started in 2005. She hasn't just scaled her brick and mortar, she's scaled her brand. So she had a TV series on, I think it was PBS, Apple TV, and Amazon Prime. It's about her life and business. I think it's called She Hustles or She Works or something like that. I'm not really sure if I'm being honest. She also does a lot of catering. She's got 3 cookbooks or more. She has a food truck. I'm curious how that food truck works into the mix with catering. I just have a feeling that there's going to be so much. This is like modern day restaurateur where it's more than just a brick and mortar. There's so many opportunities to monetize, and I think we're going to get into that. So I can't wait. Stick around. It's going to be good. Let's go take a look at some of their food real quick.
We have many flavors of our hot little biscuit. We've got our black pepper bacon, country ham, cinnamon, blackberry, cheese and chive, sharp cheddar, buttermilk, all the things. And then of course I brought you some because this is how we started the business, by making them and freezing them. Okay. And so you can bake these at home when you get back to New Hampshire and you're craving our biscuits.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you on the show for the first time, founder and CEO of Callie's Hot Little Biscuits, Carrie Morey. Carrie, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I pretty much feel unstoppable every day.
You are. I mean, just watching from the outside looking in at your story, what you've accomplished, all the things you got going on. On top of that, you're a mom, juggling all these things and managing to find the balance, or at least doing your best to find the balance, is just really impressive. I can't wait to dive into your story and to find out how you got where you are today. But let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot. Do you want a business one or a personal one?
Give us one for each.
Okay. My personal has always been work hard, play hard.
Yes.
So that's how I live my life. And then I would say within our business, the most recognizable one that we all kind of live by is be a biscuit.
Be a biscuit.
Rise tall, be warm and buttery on the inside, and be open to anyone's jam.
What's buttery look like? I'm curious. How do you be buttery?
Well, it's kind of a play on the golden rule. So be confident, rise tall. Yep. Be warm and buttery on the inside, so be kind. Yep. And be open to anyone's jam. Be accepting of everyone. Yeah. Like, everyone's different, and let's rise tall, be nice, and be kind to everyone.
Is that Callie's Hot Little Biscuits original?
It is.
I like it.
It is.
It's
we
so
even have a
brand.
T-shirt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to give you my address.
You got it. You got it.
Awesome. I cannot wait to dive into your story. I really just from, like I said, doing my research, seeing all the things you got going on, all the amazing things Charleston has said about you, just being around asking people, who should I talk to? I'm going to ask you that later today. And your name has come up multiple times to the point where I kind of lost track of who called you out. So,
oh my gosh. Well, that is very kind. I needed to hear that today. So thank you.
You earned it, my friend. So where does it make sense? Bring me to the beginning. When did you know biscuits, you're going to be in the business of biscuits?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't think that I knew I was going to be in the business of biscuits until after I'd had our first daughter, which was about 18 years ago. And I was searching for a way to work within my passion, but also be super focused and a stay-at-home mom. And I was trying to figure out, how can I work in food without owning a restaurant? And that was a problem that I was trying to solve because I wanted to have both. I wanted to be really focused and be at home with my girls, but I wanted to have a life in the food world. But I knew that owning a restaurant or owning our own gourmet spot was not going to be conducive to the lifestyle that I wanted to lead.
When you say gourmet, what do you mean by gourmet?
Well, in the beginning, my mom and I talked about opening up our own kind of Dean and DeLuca grab-and-go eatery. But, when it came down to it, you're a slave to your brick and mortar, right? So that was not going to work. And this is back in 2005, and my mother didn't even have an email address. And I had just moved home from New York, where I had been completely ensconced in all things food. And just my eyes had been open to not only all kinds of food and exposed to different people, and me exposing Southern food to my new friends in New York, but also the internet was just beginning. It was actually, I moved home because of the .com. I was working for an internet company and it went out of business. So I knew, or I thought I knew, what was getting ready to happen. And I said, well, why can't I do this business from home? Why can't we be a mail order biscuit business? Your biscuits are so great. Everyone asks for them. We need to share them. And my mother said, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Why would anyone want to buy my biscuits? So that's kind of how it started.
You got to prove mom wrong, huh?
I did.
So
I think I still am.
Nice. I love that. So what was the .com life? What was your lane? What were you doing there?
I, at 27, got recruited by my first and only boss to help her build a business within the food world and the eBay space. So this is before eBay.
Sounds like Goldbelly.
Well,
But maybe
it was before anyone had websites. So we would build them a template-based website, like for instance, Uptown Social. They didn't.
Can you date this? What year is it when you're doing this?
We started this in '97 from her dorm room in Harvard.
Okay, so like 8 years before you come back and do your own thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So she was my only job, first real job out of college, and
sounds like a Harvard thing to do in 1995 or whenever it was.
Yeah. I was her first
97.
employee hired, and she was going through business school, and she wanted to create kind of a coupon book in exchange for building people websites. This is hard to imagine because this is before anyone had websites.
Right.
Restaurants were the last to get websites.
Oh
so
they're the last to do everything, let's be honest.
we would give them, we would say, okay, for $2,500 in gift certificates, we're going to build your website. And this is going to help you bring people in the door. And then that when you give a gift certificate to somebody, we would auction them off on our website. The company was called City Spree. And they would take the gift certificates, they would buy them, and then they would come in and spend the gift certificate and inevitably spend more. And it was a way to drive traffic to the restaurants.
Got it.
So a cross between restaurant.com and eBay, if they had a baby.
So did you guys have success with this model?
We did, but it was a classic investor situation. She got investors right out of school. She won this Doublier business plan contest in Harvard. And they funded her. We all moved to New York, all three of us, and started to work. And they wanted us to scale it across the country. And so somehow I got in charge of building and hiring and managing a sales force. At one point, it was over 300 people.
Wow.
And we were going out into communities like Charleston and going door to door and selling, you need a website. The internet is the new thing. And you're not going to have to pay us any money, but we want you to give us gift certificates. And this is going to drive traffic to your restaurants.
So you go to a restaurant. You say, we're going to build you a website. You don't need to pay us, but in exchange, we want you to pay us in basically the equivalent to cash.
Correct.
And once you got those gift certificates, you would sell those gift certificates to the consumer.
Auction them off online. Mm-hmm.
So typically, how much money would you get a gift certificate for, and how much more could you, how much could you make on that?
I don't remember those logistics because it was 20-something years ago, but I do remember
100%, 200%.
We would, definitely at least 100%, but we would, sell off different increments. So one day it would be a $25, depending on the level of restaurant as well. So, we'd sell $100 or, we would sign up chain restaurants too. And then those were super popular back then. So,
so one thing I'm curious about, why eventually did it stop?
Well, it stopped because, do you remember in 1999 when the internet crashed, the dot bomb? Everyone was being funded with their ideas, and the VCs were demanding that we scale so that we could be nationwide. So we had these massive payrolls because we were employing hundreds of people to go out into their individual city, and our payroll was massive, and we weren't bringing in enough money, and we didn't get funded. I think we got funded a second a B series, and then we folded.
How did this 8-year experience, help give you the experience you needed to go do what you did next?
Well, I think I learned a lot. I learned how to, first and foremost, manage people, because I was in charge of all these people that some of them were older than me, younger than me. And, I was trying to motivate them to sell and get them excited about this opportunity, and so this is all new to all of us. And so managing and hiring and convincing people that this was a great idea was incredible experience, especially for me at 27 years old.
I mean, I feel like we're doing that with our employees, just in the restaurant industry, because we are essentially salespeople, especially our frontline people.
Correct.
Our salespeople, we're constantly, we have to convince them how amazing the product is so they can convince the consumer, and everyone has to kind of drink the Kool-Aid, right?
Absolutely.
So you're kind of getting repetitions and how to do that. What about just being so close to the restaurant industry? I mean, were you somebody who was drawn to the restaurant industry even before?
Well, I grew up working in restaurants. I grew up catering with my mom. I knew that was where my heart was, but I did not want to work in the restaurant life.
Why not? What was I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I think sometimes I wonder if I scared myself straight, if I still want to pursue this after talking to so many people. But it sounds like you were kind of wise. I mean,
for all the reasons that everybody hears, it's a hard life.
Yeah.
You're getting out at 1 a.m. You're, for lack of a better word, jacked up, hard time sleeping, then you start, being around alcohol and drugs and seeing people do so many things. It wasn't meshing with the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. I wanted to be home on the weekends. I wanted to be home in the evenings with my family. I wanted a regular, whatever regular means, 9-to-5 job, but in food.
Got it.
And in 2005, that did not exist.
No. I mean, that's one cool thing about the world we live in. I feel like the food and beverage industry has fragmented so much.
Yeah.
That there's just so many different verticals. And that's one thing that I try to get out of, we have the blinders on sometimes. That there's so much opportunity. And I think you're a perfect example of start small and scale over time.
Absolutely.
And, for some reason, people think I'm not a real restaurateur. Nobody will take me seriously until I have a $1 million, restaurant. Going for that on day one is dangerous. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure we'll kind of talk about how to scale into things as we continue with your story. Any other key variables in your earlier, your earlier journey before looking to start Callie's Hot Little Biscuits?
Well, I think knowing what my passion was the biggest important moment, I think that's really hard for young people because people say it all the time, find your passion, work in your passion. But if you don't figure that out, then work is going to be hard.
What is your passion?
I think my passion is multiple things, but mainly food.
Mm-hmm.
All things food, feeding people, specifically Southern food, but also all cultures, just learning about how food connects us.
You'll never stop learning.
You'll never.
There's so much information.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so knowing that I love food and have this passion and, think about it all the time, putting that together with feeding people and then getting the accolades and receiving that feedback is super rewarding.
When it comes to feeding people, what is it exactly about feeding people that sparks you up?
I think that is my communication. I love to feed people. I love to feed my family, my friends, strangers off the street. I love that connection, the nostalgia specifically with biscuits that people have when they taste our biscuits. And I can see it on their face and they immediately say, this tastes just like my blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Grandmothers,
Yeah.
aunts, sisters. Oh, in my family, we had this recipe passed down. And, you know, for me, that there's not a better compliment than that, you know, to hear that you've connected someone to a memory in their family.
Yeah. You mentioned the power of food, like how it connects us all.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think I see it in my own family, and I see it when I eat with strangers. Food brings you together. So you sit down, you may have had a long, tense day. You may be in an argument with somebody. You sit down and you have a meal, and it kind of breaks down the barriers. And by the end of the meal, and this happens to us all the time as a family, like we all come in hot at the end of the day, right? And it's my thing. We got to sit down for family supper. It doesn't matter if we're not speaking. This happened just last night. My second daughter was furious with us because we wouldn't let her do something. She's a teenager. By the end of the meal, everyone is just in a different headspace, you know?
What do you think's going on there?
Well, I think that there's a lot of love when you cook for someone. And so when you see that somebody has prepared a meal for you, there's got to be serotonin release, there's dopamine release, you see that somebody cares enough to take the time to make a meal with you. And throughout that process, you're talking about your day, and it always gets better, right? No matter how bad your day is, if you sit down and you have a good meal and you're with the people that you care about the most, like it kind of makes it everything else nothing else matters.
Carrie, you're striking a chord with me. I'm loving this, really. Like, this is some great stuff, and what you're sharing really brings me back. And I think this is what connection, when you talk about when people come together, food brings people together.
100%.
And when I was young, I used to think I was passionate. I think I still love food. Like, I think a lot of people love food, but I realized later in life that it wasn't necessarily the act of cooking the food that I loved. While I really did enjoy it, really what made me happy was when people came to my house to have the food. And being together, there was always food and a fire. Those two things.
Now you're speaking my language.
Those two things are like superpowers. And think about a fire. People just want to go next to it and sit around it. So now you're sitting around, you're looking around like a round table, right? You're eating food, you're talking, you're sharing stories. And I think that, to me, I realized later in life, it's the connection. It's bringing people together. It's that, to me, is the magic. And I think that's what I'm hearing in your story too.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I mean, I renovated my house and put a fireplace elevated in my kitchen so that we could have a fire at all times. Even in the miserable heat of the summer, I just turned the air down. So I'm right there with you.
I love it. Great way to get this thing started. So let's pivot. The .com boom, right? That's what you said, kind of put an end to your previous venture. What was like the worst part of that? Like, take us to like the low of the low. Was there a low, or was it kind of just like, oh, well, I guess we tried. We'll move on to the next.
No, it was really hard. It was, we all believed in this idea, and we all worked really hard to make it happen, and we ran out of time and money. How'd
that feel?
I don't think I really understood the heavy of it because I was young and it wasn't on my shoulders. And the CEO of that company, who's a dear friend, has been for 25 years. I think about that often, how heavy it must have been for her. But I was the last person to be laid off because I was in charge of letting everyone go. So, and I can remember having to call people and tell them, and, really, really awful.
There's got to be a lesson there.
Well, when I had to do that again during COVID, it was very reminiscent of that,
Trauma coming back.
Yeah. But, important life lessons there. Really important.
Like
and
what?
Transparency, honesty, doing everything you can for your team, no matter what, because at the end of the day, we didn't know what was going to happen in COVID. We thought we would be back in 2 weeks.
Not to mention you're filming a show at this time too.
Yeah. How about that?
I know.
But being honest with people, staying in contact, making sure they're okay. Just at the end of the day, being a good person and making sure you're doing the right thing by people.
I think the best thing right there is transparency. Like, this is my intention. This is what I want to do. This is what could happen that could cause me to not do what I want to do. And you need to be aware that this is a reality. If it does happen, I'm sorry, but it's on the table. Just letting people know the big picture and what's going on so they're not blindsided.
That's right.
So, like, and if they do have to do something else, they at least they have like time to like figure it out and make the transition easier. You
Right.
know? And I think transparency is huge. I mean, I'm kind of going through that right now with the restaurant Unstoppable. I usually travel with a videographer. It's not cheap to have somebody on the road with you, traveling, making them feel comfortable, giving them safe space, flying them out, then paying them to do the job on top of that.
Right.
So, like, one of the things I'm learning here at the restaurant Unstoppable is, like, you don't know what you know until you know. The only way to know is to give it a shot, right? And to be completely open and honest and transparent the whole way. So right now I'm here by myself, right? So I'm trying to find the balance of when do I need the videographer and what can I do on my own, get
Right.
outside my comfort zone, juggling all these cameras, you know? But I think it all starts with that transparency.
Sure.
So I think now is a great time to take a break to thank our sponsors, and we'll be right back to talk about how you started to move things along with Callie's Hot Little Biscuits. And I just realized I never had a Callie's Hot Little Biscuit.
Yes, you need a biscuit break.
I know. I was so like, just like, well, let's get started. I don't want to waste your time. All right. So which one should I try?
Are you a sweet or a savory person? So try the country ham biscuit, which is why I started the business. This is my mom's recipe.
The country ham biscuit.
Country ham biscuit. So it's a sharp cheddar biscuit, and no, right here. That's the bacon. So we take a sharp cheddar biscuit, freshly grated sharp cheddar, hand make the biscuit. And so I think a lot of people don't understand what I mean by this. We literally mix the dough by hand. We chop the Edwards Virginia ham. We make a whipped Dijon mustard butter, chop the ham very fine in the center so that you get ham in every bite. It doesn't come out after the first bite.
Are these recipes in the cookbook?
That one is not. That one is not, but you
Smart.
could figure it out. You could figure it out. So that is the reason that we started the business, and then it's gone on from there.
All right, I gotta try now.
Yeah, that's the blackberry. That's a good little sweet. It's a shortcake biscuit, which is perfect for summer. It's a milk-based biscuit as opposed to a buttermilk biscuit. It's got the best blackberry jam in the center. It's got hints of vanilla and a little bit of sugar, but still savory. Turbinado sugar on the top. So delicious.
Oh wow! It crumbles easier than the last one, but it's good.
Yeah, so it's got double the fat. It's a shortcake. So it's going to be a little bit more crumbly. It's kind of like if a biscuit and a pound cake had a baby.
So good. Wow! Wow! I'm gonna bring these someplace to make friends later today.
Oh, yeah.
So good. All right.
I'm glad you like them.
So, I mean, like is an understatement. I like thoroughly enjoy that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Trying to figure out how we're going to chop that up on the back end. We're back. Now let's get into the nitty gritty of your business, Callie's Hot Little Biscuits. You've always loved your mom's biscuits.
I have always loved my mom's biscuits.
You've always wanted to be a food entrepreneur.
No.
No.
I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I think I did it out of necessity because I couldn't find a job that would allow me the lifestyle I wanted to lead and work in the industry that I wanted.
I think I said it wrong. You always knew you wanted to work with food.
Correct.
Yes.
I always wanted to work with food. I didn't know how that was going to work, and that was the problem I was trying to solve.
You got laid off.
I got laid off.
What's going on? Where are you emotionally? Are you okay with it?
Well, I moved to New York for this job, so I actually decided I wasn't ready to leave New York, and I got my own apartment on my own and found another job as a recruiter at a small staffing agency just because I just wasn't ready to leave, and I think I needed to prove to myself that I could make it on my own in New York.
Yeah, and this was right up your alley. You had an incredible, resume to do this, right? So any reason to hover over this part of your life any longer, or are there any lessons to draw, or should we move forward?
Only thing that I would say about my moment with understanding the country ham biscuit and how it was going to play into the rest of my life is that this job, I was a salesperson, so I was trying to get people to use our staffing agency. And so I would take my mom's biscuits, put them in my suitcase. I would leave them in my freezer. They probably had freezer burn. And I would parcel them out, heat them up, wrap them in foil, like in packs of 4 with a handwritten note. And I'd send them in the morning with a courier to whoever the client was that I was trying to get. And people that weren't Southern would say, oh my God, what the hell is this? This is the best thing I've ever put in my mouth. And that was when I knew there was something more to the biscuit. because I knew Southerners love country ham biscuits, but I was meeting with all kinds of people and they loved it and they couldn't get enough. And so that's probably when my wheels started to turn, and I met my husband in New York, and we knew that we didn't want to live in New York forever, so we moved back to Charleston.
Wheels turning. What do you mean? What's going on? What's the narrative?
Just started dreaming about, wow, what if I was able to figure out a way to work in food? I don't need to worry about being, in sales necessarily, although I'm in sales.
We're all in sales.
We are all
I believe
in sales.
everyone, whether you know it or not, you are selling. You're on a date, you're selling yourself.
The hustle is
you're
real.
going for a job opportunity, you're selling yourself.
Right.
You're meeting a new great group of people and you want to become friends with them, you're selling yourself.
Right. So I think it was just like this little moment. I tucked it away. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't have the aha moment to start the business. And it wasn't until I came home, got married, worked with my father, who was an investment advisor, which was another sales job that I definitely was not passionate about, although I loved my father and loved working with him. And that was when I said, you know what, I'm not going to work. I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom. And that lasted about 6 months. And then I said, okay, I got to figure something out because I'm going kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so that's when I really started to say, okay, well, what could I do? Should we open this grab-and-go eatery, meaning like the Dean and DeLuca gourmet shop? And that just wasn't feasible.
What is Dean and DeLuca for those who aren't familiar?
Oh, God. Well, I don't even think Dean and DeLuca's around anymore. But
For the record, I'm one of those people who's not familiar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. What is Dean and DeLuca? I'm from New Hampshire. We didn't have those up there.
Okay, well, Dean and DeLuca is a small group, or was. I don't think it's around anymore, of very high-end gourmet, small bodegas. New York, L.A., St. Helena.
Like pre-made foods?
Pre-made foods. They brought in the finest packaged foods. You could go and get coffee and lattes, and they were on many corners of New York.
Bodega is like a convenience store for those.
Yeah,
who
but like high-end.
High-end. Got it.
Like a fancy grab-and-go gourmet shop.
I think the other thing that's worth resurfacing, and I'm afraid I just want to bring it to the surface in case it doesn't come up again, is that you noticed that there was a void in the market. That biscuits was a very southern thing, saturated in the South, but the rest of the country was wide open market.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was also could have been a huge hindrance. And I would say it
Why
was
would that have been a
until
hindrance?
in the last 10 years. Well, because a lot of people would tell you that 15 years ago they didn't eat biscuits unless they were from the South.
Right.
People in New York would say, we eat bagels, we don't eat biscuits. And out west they'd say, we eat avocado toast, not biscuits.
But I think what's also interesting, ironically, around the time that you were launching this business, the internet's also launching. Like, I'm talking the mobile experience. So between 2007 and 2010, everybody wanted everything, no matter where it was, because they could see it. You're in New Hampshire, you see South Carolina biscuits, you're like, how do I get my hands on those things? You're in California, you see New York City bagels. How do I get my hands? You're in New York, you see California sourdough. How do I get my hands on that? So like there was this crazy thing happening. No matter where you were, everybody wanted it.
Correct.
And there was so much opportunity to be best in class in your region if it wasn't being done yet.
That is right. And there was not another biscuit business. I remember trying to lease a space to make the biscuits and ship them in downtown Charleston. And when I would meet with realtors, I'd say, I want to start a biscuit business. And they'd say, what are you talking about? What's a biscuit business? You know? And so I was really trying to educate, and really I was in a new sector. I mean, nobody was shipping food online, especially in Charleston.
So
maybe Omaha Steaks.
So you wanted to originally you wanted to have the grab and go. That was like the goal.
Yeah, but then I realized that wasn't going to fit my lifestyle either. That was dreamy, but I was going to be working there 7 days a week and slaving away, and that was not what I wanted to do. I had to remember my reason for searching, which was I want to find a job where I can be a full-time mom. So, I thought, I can sell this one product. I started the business with just country ham biscuits. So I tell people that because if I can start a business with one regional product that most of the country doesn't even know exists, and be in business 18 years later and have what I would call a success story, you can do anything with enough passion, gumption, hustle.
Yeah.
But
I think the key to your story, sorry to cut you short.
No.
I think the key to your story, and I was thinking about sitting on this until later, but I think so many people get in trouble because they try to go too big too soon.
And one of the biggest lessons I've learned talking to nearly 1,000 successful restaurateurs is start where you can. Just start.
Sure. That is one of the hardest parts, is to just take the leap and start.
And what's your overhead associated with a mail order versus opening a brick and mortar?
Oh my God, it's so much easier to do the mail order. But you don't always necessarily have the volume that you can have with a brick and mortar.
It's true. But
now you do,
but
your
your
not before
liabilities
COVID.
are a lot lower too, so you're not going to get shut down.
But if you're a true entrepreneur, because this is what happened to me, we started the internet business, and we were a fourth quarter business, and even then we would be able to, once we got the hang of it, I was like, okay, I want more business. How else can I sell these biscuits? What avenues can I go in? Oh, well, we should sell them to grocery stores. Oh, we should do biscuit classes.
Yes.
So as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking, like, how else can I do this? And you're not realizing that you're either you're growing your brand, but you're also in some cases hurting yourself if you're trying to scale. Because in theory, if you're trying to scale, you should probably just pick one area and grow it.
Yes.
But that is not my personality.
Well, I think vertical integration might come into the mix of this conversation. Is it going to?
No. Well, I'm definitely down for it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of vertical integration. But before we get to that point, I think that will come out organically as we progress. So what year is it when you're having the conversation of I'm gonna do this, and you actually start making steps towards shipping your first biscuits? Was it 2003, 4?
We shipped our first biscuits in November of 2005. So we took that whole year. I'm sure I started talking about it when Caroline, my oldest, was about 7 months old. So in 2004 is when we started talking about it.
2004, started talking about it. 2005, things started to get into motion.
Mm-hmm.
What was if somebody wants to do what you did, maybe they want to do mail order tortillas, fill in the blank, mail order, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Their passion, mail order. What are the things to consider?
Well, it's totally different now than it was when I started. So the road has been paved. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit easier, but it costs more money.
So what's easier about it now?
Well, you've got social media, which is a great way to start, because you can start tomorrow really small and do it.
What does that look like?
Grow it.
If you're starting today, knowing what you know about the mail order, what would you do differently? How did you do it, and what would you do today?
If I were starting today, knowing what I know now, I probably would go out and get investors, especially if the market wasn't saturated.
Even with mail order?
Yeah.
Why? Where is that money going? What do you need that initial cash flow for?
Advertising.
Okay.
Which I never spent money on advertising until in the middle of COVID.
Okay, wow. So 15 years into it. But you had scaled pretty considerably up to that point. When did things start to take off for you?
I would say that we were always a fourth quarter mail order business.
What does that mean?
That means that we were slow year round until
Christmas,
October, November, December, and it would be slammed.
Got it.
Like almost you couldn't handle it. We were small.
Got it.
So, the SEO and advertising online digitally has helped us grow to be busier in other times of the year. And we still have a ways to go.
I want gravy and biscuits right now so bad. This image just keeps coming up in my head over and over again. Sorry. But so I was thinking, the reason why I was thinking that is because how else could you market biscuits outside of that pocket, that holiday pocket? And I was like, breakfast. That's why I was envisioning biscuits and gravy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it again. Okay. So how did you get away from, what was the evolution? What did you, I think we're still going down this path of what would you be doing differently, knowing what you know now. So kind of pick up that train of thought.
Well, I would definitely get investors. I'd get experts that knew the field, which I did not. I would hire a PR firm to help spread the word and talk about us and get some media. And I probably would find a co-packer, which I didn't do any of those things. I did hire a PR firm.
So running ads, PR, co-packer, shotgun, or what's the word I'm looking for? Big, guess, what would we need to budget for that? A ballpark figure. How far out of reach is that just for most people, or how close is it? And people don't realize how close it is.
Well, this would be in my dream world if I was trying to scale the business and grow it and sell it. Millions,
Right.
millions.
Yeah. So that's what you would do in the dream world.
Yeah.
Take us back to the way you actually did. So you started with just mail order.
Started with just mail order. My mom and I each put in $10,000, bought a sealing machine that I saw at my butcher and said, ooh, this will help keep the biscuits in place and keep them from freeze or burn. And put that on the top of my dryer. Made the biscuits at a local catering company on their 1 day off a week, and then transported them to my house. And while my babies were crawling around on the floor, I would hand apply labels and spray them onto tin tie coffee bags. And probably twice a week, go out to the FedEx office and drop off the few boxes that were randomly coming in.
Yeah. So this is 2005. What was the next evolution to your, like, what was like what was like a hurting point, a struggle, and how did you like get to the next point? How did you overcome that?
The next point was we decided after doing it as a trial for about 8 months, we decided two things. My mom and I should have never gone into business together because it was disastrous. And two, we needed to make a go of it or not do it. And so we went and borrowed, I think, $80,000 and put together a budget that included renting a space and hiring a PR firm, buying packaging, all the bare minimum things we would need to do, and enough money to pay very part-time employees to help bake.
When did this happen?
2006, seven.
So about 2 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
What was the disaster that was happening between you and your mom? Paint the picture of what the realities are of working with family and how that can be.
Going back to being a really good salesperson, I talked her into doing something she didn't believe in, she didn't want to do, and she wasn't passionate about. But I'm a good salesperson. So I said, you got to do this with me.
So did she eventually transition out?
Yes.
Pretty early on, it sounds like.
It took us a while. I can remember being on the streets of New York after the Today Show and having a shouting match and screaming at each other in the cab. And I said, we can't do this anymore.
So this is 2007? The Today Show?
That was 2008.
So around this time.
Right after that, it was.
So you realize we maybe shouldn't be working together. We're not great mother-daughter relationship.
Yeah.
Not the best business partner relationship.
It's hard to have a partner, period.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard. I mean, I was no angel either.
Well,
it was mutual. We
get
both
real. Like, we're reflecting back the woman you are today, how you've evolved emotionally, and I'm sure as we progress into life, we always, I think that the evolution never stops, right?
Right.
So reflecting back into the mid 2000s, the woman you were then, what advice would you give yourself?
Do it on your own.
Do it on your own. What were you doing? What was like the challenge between
I
you
think
and
I was scared. I knew that I could run the business, manage it. I didn't have the baking knowledge, and I didn't want to dig in and learn it.
Okay.
I wasn't given the opportunity.
You wanted to outsource to your mom as far as the knowledge.
That's why I say, like, you don't need to be an expert in baking to have a biscuit business. You need to be an expert in business or managing people and
giving them the tools
and having the passion to grow a business, so but I didn't have that. I didn't have the vision for what the company is today. I mean, remember, I wanted to have a mail order only business. And as my children got older and went to preschool and I had 2 extra hours in the day, I'd sit around and go, well, how else can I sell these biscuits?
Mm-hmm.
So it was always dreaming about how to grow the business.
Yeah.
I didn't have that plan. It just organically happened. When I had free time, I was like, okay, well, what else can we do? What can we do now?
This is a very good point. I think that people get married to their visions. They share their visions. And if they have any level of integrity, they go, well, if I don't follow through with what I said I'm going to do, I'm going to have less integrity. I suffer from this. But I think it's important to accept that your vision can change over time. As you open yourself up to new perspective, new inspiration, as you grow, as your skills improve, your vision's going to change. The possibilities change. And I think it's good to kind of hang on to like your original vision. Like, it's like, as long as you're headed generally north, we're going this way, right? You can hone in which one, like, radial you want to be on. Maybe it's not 360 degrees, but it might be 350 degrees, but it's still this general direction.
Right.
And you can tighten it as you go into the future. So you knew you wanted to be a food person. You didn't necessarily want to be cooking the food, but you wanted to start a business around the food. Your mom didn't want anything to do with the business. So how did you kind of close this gap of, okay, how do we transition mom out, and how do we get systems? How do we make it as close to possible as when mom is doing it?
Well, when we finally agreed that she would step out, I went in and we had a few college kids that were baking with us. And I said, I had to humbly go to them and say, I need to learn how to do this.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I mean, I'd made biscuits, but I wasn't paying attention.
I love the vulnerability right now, by the way. Thank you.
I wasn't. I was focused on growing the business.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was scared of failure, because I've always been a cooker, but I've never been a baker.
Right. It's chemistry.
But the interesting part about making biscuits is that it's not necessarily what I would call baking. It is a baked good, but it has so much forgiveness, unlike most baked goods, that anybody can do it. And the most important key ingredient is the love for it. So I had to kind of let everything down. And I think also I thought that was my mom's role, and I didn't think I'd be able to do it as good as her. So once I dug
That's a
in.
fear. That's an anxiety.
Sure.
That's not necessarily real, but it's the narrative you're telling yourself.
Right. Once I got in there and put an apron on and did it for months, I was like, oh my God, what was I scared of?
What you experience in that moment is literally, we just had this author on the show. His name's Tom Sterner, and I'm echoing this because it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The power of just the practicing mind, of recognizing and realizing that you are not your thoughts. That
Right.
you need to shift to the place of the observer and move like outside of your body to recognize that your thoughts are controlling you. Where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be in your journey. And if you want to get better, just focus on the practice. Do it over and over and over. And before you know, you almost find like it's almost like meditation. Like doing the thing is like getting lost in the practice is meditative.
Well,
And then like whereas you're like, why was I so afraid of this? Right?
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Well, most of us are afraid of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So once you know it, there's nothing to fear.
Yeah, it's so true. We don't know what we don't know either, which is the other scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only one way to find out.
There's only one way to find out.
Start making biscuits.
That's right.
Yeah. So you start making the biscuits. I am curious too. You said 2000. So you didn't really start taking off until later. You said, but you're on the Good Morning America show. Are you just being modest?
We had a really good PR firm who today is still like one of my confidants. So
you did have some.
We had, this was, and again, this part of PR is kind of a dying art. So it's hard for people to remember. But I mean, Bon Appetit and the Today Show, they are always looking for what's next. What are we going to talk about today? I mean, think about the Today Show's live television. They're always looking for content. It's
the Today Show.
That's right. And so I partnered, I hired Leapfrog PR, Libba, and she made it her business to have connections with.
I'm like, this name sounds super familiar. I'm like, oh.
She's amazing.
She's your publicist, and I've been talking to her for the past.
Yes.
That's why it sounds familiar.
So, she has the connections. And so she would write and say, this is a great brand. It's a great story. And why don't we come on the Today Show and teach Kathy, Lee, and Hoda how to make biscuits?
I need a publicist so bad.
Libba, I highly recommend her.
Libba, let's talk, sister. Let's make this happen. So one thing I'm curious about, actually, I'm going to start that over. Okay, so we've driven home the significance of having a good publicist. And as much as, I almost don't like to admit that it's so important, because you'd like to think that your ability to do the job and your talent should speak for itself, right? And word of mouth should be able to be enough to get the word out there. But I don't think it is anymore. It's such a noisy place.
Very noisy, very, very noisy, and everyone's super competitive.
Yeah. So
it wasn't like that though when we started. So
I think it's even noisier now.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't as noisy as it is now by far. So it was a lot easier. But I didn't have any connections with people at high-end food magazines or national television shows.
So you're a couple years into this. You have the savviness to have a PR person. You take the leap to start making biscuits and learning and starting to practice on your own. What was the next step? Eventually, you got out of making biscuits, right?
don't know. I still make biscuits today. I mean, I don't make them, I'm not counted on for, but there are many a day at Hot Little Biscuit because of our short staff situation that I'm making biscuits. So I would say for the restaurants, oh my gosh, I make biscuits all the time.
Yep.
On the fly.
So at this point, you're still just mail order only.
At this point, we're mail order only, and we are still renting kitchen space. When I hired the publicist is when we rented the space, and we got the Food Network called and said we want to do that. That was really the impetus to get the space, because the Food Network called and I said, we cannot film in this rented catering kitchen. We got to get a space. Like we got to either put some money into it and do it or not. And so that's when we did that, and they came in and filmed. And this was a show, you may remember it. It was called Unwrapped, where they traveled all over the country and they did pieces on how food was made. And it was anything from really small companies like mine to like how do they make Laffy Taffy and massive production facilities. So they came and spent 12 hours with us, and it aired for eight years.
12 hours? I feel guilty asking for 2 hours.
12 hours.
12
It was a
hours.
long day, and I was very pregnant.
Oh, wow.
But that show would air all the time, and that is how we built our email list, because there was no social media. I mean, that people would watch the show, we'd go to bed, the show would air at 10 o'clock, and we'd wake up and we'd have 150 orders. Back then, that was a lot of orders.
Right.
That was like what we would get an entire month at Christmas. So
And you're still just shipping frozen biscuits at this point?
just shipping 2 flavors. Well, I started with just one, the country ham. Then we added about a year in the cheese and chive.
Got it. So many different things. Like I'm trying to decide what to talk about first. Were you profitable? I'm curious. Were you profitable before this point? Before like the American Good Morning or the Today Show, and then the Food Network? Because you took out loans. So
We took a loan, and we did not pay ourselves any money until right around the 2-year mark. I think we ended up at the end of the 2nd year of that loan, paying off the loan and writing each of us a check for $10,000.
Wow. So it took 3 years almost to get to the point where you're profitable. Of just what put you in the position? Is it because you had multiple revenue, multiple incomes coming in the house? How did you sustain this for 3 years without profit? I guess is what I'm curious.
Well, I made a promise to my husband that I would not let it interfere with my mom duties. So I was a stay-at-home mom. I only worked either with them on my hip or when they were in like church day school for 2 hours a day.
Got it. So you had I wasn't sure of your married situation, if you were with somebody or if you were a single mom at this point.
Yeah,
so
he was bringing home the bacon.
There's definitely benefits to being in a multi-revenue family.
Oh,
household.
yeah. Yeah,
Like,
I
you
mean,
can
I
lean on
wouldn't have
each
been
other.
able to do it without him.
Yeah.
Even
Sometimes
today.
as a single male, I forget sometimes that when you get married, sometimes there's multiple revenue coming in. It makes it easier for sure.
Yeah.
So you get all this exposure. You start getting 150 orders like overnight. What's the next evolution for you?
Well, then I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to figure out how we can sell more. Because once you start selling, you're like, okay, let's start dreaming about how can we sell more. Well, I don't want to just only sell when we're on this TV show. So what are we going to do with these people that have ordered? We're going to create an email list. And I don't want to just ask them for orders all the time. I need to give them something. And so that was when a dear friend who is my book agent said, you should start a food blog. And I said, a food blog? And this was 2008. I don't even think I knew. I was like, why would anybody want me to write a food blog? I'm not a chef.
Yeah.
And she said, but you cook so much and you have so many great recipes and you've got great stories. You should just share them through your email. And then right about this time, we went on the Today Show, and Hoda and Kathy Lee, we taught them how to make biscuits. And we brought a crab dip for them to put on the biscuit. And so we're at the moment of truth. The biscuits are made, and it's the final shot. And she says, she puts the biscuit in her mouth, and she had dolloped some of the crab
Hoda
dip.
or Kathy Lee?
Both of them.
Okay.
They had dolloped some of the hot crab dip on their biscuit, and they took the bite, and they go, oh, my God, this is the best crab dip I've ever tasted in my entire life.
And you're like, what about the biscuits?
And that started the blog because we had 400 and something phone calls, emails, text about, can we have the recipe for the crab dip? I'm like, what about the biscuits?
Yeah.
They did buy a lot of biscuits too. So that was the very first recipe we ever published. And then from then on, it was just what I was feeding my family, if we had a family recipe that we wanted to share. And that went on for years until from 2008 we wrote. And then that way I felt like I was giving you something and I wasn't always saying, bye. Here's a recipe that I make for my family.
Right.
For the 4 people that read it. I'm sure nobody was reading.
Yeah. And if you want to make this recipe, like I feel like today it's like, here's a recipe and here is where you can go to get all the ingredients and the tools you need, the pots, the pans. So now there's opportunity for like affiliate marketing. I don't know if you ever
Yeah,
realized
but that wasn't even a thing back then. And I was so elementary. I would literally not even type it in the right recipe order and just say, here's how I make it. And it was very rough.
But where you were is exactly where you needed to be to get started.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's only gotten better from there.
And I felt really good about always reaching out to the customer because I was giving them something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that from my sales background, I knew that like if I gave you something, then I had an opportunity to ask you for something.
Quid pro quo. Yeah.
So I did from 2008 until 2014, wrote recipes, 1 or 2 a month, and just kind of built that, not thinking anything of it, and then got a book deal.
Wow.
And
so
again,
that was your first book deal.
That was my first book deal. And I said, well, who in the hell is going to buy this? Nobody's going to buy this. And they said, just treat it like it's a product. So we treated it like it was a product launch on our website. And not many people bought it. But I'm proud to say now that it's been out for over 10 years, we've sold over 30,000 copies.
Wow.
So it's been an incredible opportunity, something that I never in a million years thought I would get the opportunity to do, and nor did I really think that I was qualified to do. But I did it.
So did the book deal come to you, or did you go seek a book deal?
No, the book deal came to me, but I have an incredible agent. Surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me has always been my MO. So she sold the book deal, and she's a great friend and always believed in me and saw something that I never saw, even today. And she also sold my second cookbook too. So it was great.
Wow. So, okay, so now you have, just to paint the big picture, the year is around 2008, right? You have your mail order. You have now developed 2 recipes for biscuits. You have published a book. You got an email list.
Book didn't come out till 2014.
14, got it. But you have your email list, your blog, where you're now you're giving instead of asking. You're going the back and forth, which is very important. Is your email list evolving at this point, or is it segmented?
Yeah, because every time we would be featured on the Today Show, on the Food Network, and my publicist is still working. So like we got a great, piece in Saveur. We got a great piece in Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. People would come to the website. We'd capture their email address. So it was just building.
Got it.
Organically.
So what was the next, at this point, are you continuing to increase your profits into early 2010s?
We're making money. I mean, we weren't making a ton of money. We were still trying to navigate through like a growing business. It's so hard because you don't really know, or I didn't really know what I was doing. So yes, we were making money, but we were also spending money to, better our facility, buy better packaging, hire more people. But we always made money at the end of every year.
Yeah. So what was...
But I didn't know what my margins were. I didn't have anybody. I had an accountant, and she would say, this is how much money you made at the end of the year. But I never had somebody going, okay, well, you should sell this biscuit because, what we found out not very long ago is that, the ham biscuit, while it is, what started the business, it is the most labor-intensive biscuit to make. It takes 3 days to make it, and it is expensive. It's ludicrous. It's like caviar. And so it's not our best seller because it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah. So what was next? Was that the next element of trying to figure, So
this is what happened. In 2014, I went on a book tour to sell the book, where exactly nobody came to buy the book. And the few people that did said, well, when I come to Charleston, where can I buy your biscuits hot? And I said, I don't know. We don't have,
Right.
I don't have a place for you to do that. And so I came home from the book tour and went to all my friends and people that I knew in the culinary community. And I said, you need to put my biscuits on your menu. The restaurants did not have biscuits in Charleston. Nobody wanted to make them. They're labor intensive. They're a pain in the ass. And nobody wants to serve bread anymore because,
Right.
it's a cost that you can't recoup. I said, you can charge for a basket of Callie's biscuits, put it on your menu, and nobody would do it.
Really?
And so the question in my mind was, where can they get the hot little biscuits? Where can they get the hot little biscuits? I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to get the hot little biscuits to them.
Your fear is facing you straight in the face. Like the fear of, I don't want to open a restaurant, right?
I
It's
did
now
not.
staring you down, like you're looking on the barrel of this idea of
Yeah.
opening a brick and mortar.
But what I knew was that if I didn't open a brick and mortar, then I wasn't going to be able to grow the online and really the wholesale because nobody knew about us.
Yeah.
We're like living in cyberspace. Nobody knew before 2014 about Callie's Biscuits here in this community.
Wow.
And when I opened that store, it was
Almost 10 years after starting.
Yeah. Well, we're going to celebrate our 9th year in that King Street space this summer. Nobody knew about Callie's Biscuits until we opened it. And I opened it not because I wanted to open a restaurant, but because I wanted to use it as a way to advertise, to grow the
Yeah.
online and the
Well,
wholesale.
I feel like especially King Street is such a, like, it's like, Bourbon Street for New Orleans.
But
right?
it
Like,
wasn't then.
But now.
But now it is.
Yeah. So like,
Yes.
I feel like it's like now it's one of the stops you have to make when you're on King Street.
Right.
There's so many iconic spots, right? That are like, when you think of Charleston, you think of these brands. You're in the perfect spot, right? So how many total Callie Biscuits locations are there?
2 now. We had 4. 2 of them were out of state. One was in Charlotte and one was in Atlanta.
Okay. And was that, so this is pre-COVID where you're thinking scale?
I opened that first one and it was overnight. I opened it with a business plan of if I can just have 30 transactions a day, and I think the price was like $8.35, I will not lose money. It was never about making money. It was about, I just want to I want to use this as a
Branding.
market.
Yeah.
I heard a bunch of people speak, and one of the people that spoke at a conference was the founders of Stonewall Kitchens. And they said, well, everybody knows that our brick and mortars, like a Williams-Sonoma or whatever, they don't make money. They're there for marketing. And I thought, oh, I never thought of it that way.
So people can experience it the first time, and then once they have it, they want to order.
So that combined with where can they get the hot little biscuits, I found this sliver that was an alley that was walled in. And I said, I'm going to open this.
I rode past it twice.
Yeah, oh, I know. You blink. It's
I was like,
it's
where? I was like,
476
it's
and a
right
half.
here. I was
It's
like,
not
oh,
even
it's
a building.
Yeah, it's literally like
It's
you
a
can fit your
walled
shoulders
in
in it.
alley. Yeah, it's 8 feet wide by 80 feet long.
Yeah, it's beautiful space. So
And
I
I
love it.
brought
It's
some
very
of my
cool.
chef friends in. I was like, can I put a kitchen in here? It's 40 feet. It's 40 inches wide. They're like, oh, yeah, you got it. You can do it.
It's perfect for your concept though, because I don't think people are coming to like sit down and eat biscuits.
No.
They want to grab their biscuit. They
You
want
go.
to get their Instagram shot in the space. It's a very beautiful space, and they want to take it to go. You
And
know?
my inspiration was all those bodegas in New York that I would go
Yeah.
in and grab a bagel or a cup of coffee. And I thought, it doesn't need to be anything more than this. It doesn't
Yeah.
need to be a full-blown restaurant. And I needed to think back to why did I start this business? And that was my children. I'm going to open it from 8 to 2. If I'm the only one running the store, I can still get in the carpool line.
I love it. 8 to 2, beautiful. Yeah, I mean that's the other cool thing too. I feel like biscuits. I mean, well, yeah, because you want to take you can have biscuits any time of day. I feel like they're great
As
with
long as they're
breakfast.
hot.
As long as they're hot, but I don't know. I'm gonna drop that train of thought. But one thing I am curious about, one thing I do love about what you're doing, is one thing really well, which has definitely been a trend in the most successful brands I've talked to. They don't spread themselves out. They don't.
My
try
husband would beg to differ with you. He's like, why do you have to do it in so many different ways?
you're
Can you
doing-
just sell one flavor, one vertical, and just sell it? I'm like, no, that's boring.
But how many? I mean, I didn't actually get a chance to look at the menu. I admit. But other than, does every menu item include a biscuit?
We're only biscuits. We do have grits
Grits.
and coffee and tea.
Okay, so it's still pretty narrow.
Oh, yeah.
Relative to what it could be.
Yes.
Like you go to like a Mexican restaurant or a Chinese restaurant sometimes, and they hand you a book.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
there's
no.
10 pages, and it's filled from corner to corner with just like a list that every item has its own number,
Right.
Like when you do that, you're spreading yourself so thin, and you become so dependent on the people to execute that menu. But when you focus your narrow to doing one thing really well, I mean, you're doing biscuits, you have multiple types of biscuits, but really like your focus is biscuits.
Right. Definitely.
I feel like if you're going to do anything, try to be the best at one thing instead of trying to be everything to everyone.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that you do really well. So I'm curious today, if we kind of get in the airplane, we zoom up to 30,000 feet. You have 2 brick and mortars at 1.4. You closed 2 because of the pandemic.
I mean, I opened Atlanta the second. I opened Atlanta second. Ignorance is bliss. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had a great space and a family friend, and I thought if we're gonna, at that point I was like, I want to have Hot Little Biscuits everywhere. I didn't even know what it would entail to do that, but I met with a couple of consultants, and they're like, you got to prove the concept. You got to have 4 locations. You got to have some out of market, and this is what they need to be grossing. And I was like, okay, we can do that.
So I'm thinking to myself, your objective is to use these brick and mortars to get the brand out. So,
but then when I saw the lines down the street and the money that we made, I was like, oh my God, we should do this and the internet and the wholesale. And that is when you kind of get so excited because people love it, and you want to. People were emailing me every day, go, I want to open one here, I want to do that, and you get caught up in that, and you think if you have the right people on your team, anything is possible.
There's truth to that,
and there is truth to that, but I also needed to be with my family. Mm-hmm. And so, and I spent a ton of time in Atlanta, and Charlotte was just COVID related 100%. We just, we opened 2 weeks before COVID.
So knowing what you know now, after taking this dive face first into the brick and mortar part of the food and beverage industry, restaurants, what have you learned? How have you evolved? If you're doing it again and you're trying to scale the brick and mortar, what's your new approach?
I think I'm really focused on doing what we're doing in Charleston really well. So we're super focused after years, and everyone can relate to this, going through COVID in the restaurant world and in online and retailer, focusing on making sure we're profitable, because it's somewhere along that 3-year hell of COVID, everybody knows. I mean, our profits took nosedives. I mean, some of them went up,
flour.
But only for flour,
like
butter, eggs, everything.
All of your ingredients.
Packaging, freight, everything. And so we were focused on trying to keep everything alive, and probably not as focused on margin and profit, because we're not a nonprofit. We want to make money.
Yeah, I mean, it was never your goal when you first started the brick and mortar to profit. You want just to cover your costs. Right. So now you're like, well, I got to reapproach this, because now there's opportunity to profit, and there's a huge opportunity we're missing. So where did you start? What was the first step to becoming profitable?
Making hard decisions like closing Charlotte and closing Atlanta because the lease was up and they wanted to raise the rent, and we weren't barely making any money, not enough to stay open, and then know that when we increased the rent and having staffing issues, I was like, I got to simplify my life. I also had, our youngest daughter was having a health crisis, and I needed to be with her every day. And it made it really easy. I can only do so much in a day. Yeah. Let's focus on what we have here and grow this. And we were growing a catering division that kind of just popped up out of nowhere because people kept calling this restaurant. And I'm like, oh my God, we can't do catering out of an 800 or 600 square foot space. So it was just a perfect storm of, okay, Carrie, you've got to take some things off your plate, and let's focus on what we can control.
Got it. So I agree. The first step is stop the bleeding, right? When you're trying to get profitable, stop, like, what's working right now? Where can we funnel our focus to what's working now and stop the bleeding? But I'm curious, where were you emotionally and mentally just before closing? Like, were you feeling like was there a down point? Were you feeling like you failed?
I think with Atlanta, I did not feel like a failure. We were open for 7 years. It brought so much recognition, joy. We were in the middle of an incredible neighborhood. We had so many great customers, and I felt like our time was done there. Mm-hmm. If you can get past the 2-year mark, I think that's a success. Yeah. So the fact that we were there for 7 years, and it did a lot. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about how not to grow. It taught me a lot about how to grow.
What about not to grow? What
Well,
like,
first, for starters, do not open your second location 5 hours away.
okay, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say it. I was like,
Oh,
I'm not
no.
here to share my opinion. I'm here to listen to a different perspectives.
No,
But the thought that I had in my mind was that your goal isn't. I was trying to keep on telling myself she's not trying to scale a restaurant.
No,
she's
I
trying
was
to get
trying
exposure.
to grow the brand.
Yeah, and I was like, in that case, that makes sense because it's just people are essentially sampling in different markets that might
Exactly.
want this.
I needed
So I
to
was like-
grow the brand, and I didn't think that Charleston could handle a second one. Now I look at it, Charleston could probably handle 4 or 5 more.
Okay, so you close Charleston, you close
Atlanta.
Atlanta. So Charleston's still going.
Oh yeah, we have 2 in here.
Oh.
We have 2 here. We have one
Okay.
that's been open. Will be open 9 years in
Got it.
July, and one that just
So
celebrated
total
its 6th year.
4 locations right now.
We had 4, now we have 2.
I'm
We have
confused.
2 in Charleston,
Yeah.
1 in Atlanta, 1 in Charlotte. We
So that's-
closed. That's
Oh, so-
4, and we've closed Charlotte and Atlanta.
Oh, I thought you said you were still going with Charlotte.
No.
Oh.
Charlotte never even got off the ground. Charlotte was disastrous from day one.
Sorry about that.
That was a money pit.
So okay, so you narrow your focus. You say, what are we doing? What's already working? Let's do it better.
Mm-hmm.
Let's refine our systems, refine our processes, menu engineering. What else? Like paint the picture.
Hire in-house finance person and not rely on a 10-year accountant that wasn't there on the daily, like helping us figure out what exactly is profitable, where our cogs are, what our margins were. I mean, I think about how did we get along without having somebody in the business every day helping
Volume
us.
is how you did it. I'm sure, right? And I think that's also the benefit of not being limited to your square footage. I think you started with the masses, where there's literally no limit to how many biscuits you could sell, because if you have access to a telephone or the internet, you have access to biscuits.
Yes.
Right? And that's kind of what the industry is starting to realize now with ghost kitchens and being digitally present. But you were ahead of the curve, way ahead of the curve. You started the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
You said, I'm going to open myself up to the world and then open up locally in
Correct.
Charleston.
I did it the exact opposite
So
way.
you had access to the volume, and that volume was floating the business. But now you start to see, wait, there's a huge opportunity that I'm missing by putting energy into the brick and mortar.
Energy into the brick and mortar. And also there was a point right after the major part of COVID where we lost some big business due to competition coming in and undercutting. And then that's when we really started looking, oh my God, what are our margins? What are our cogs? We've grown every single year in the 18 years, anywhere from 15 to 40%. But the last 2 years, our cogs, while we've grown maybe 27 to 30%, our cogs have also grown 80 to 90%.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I didn't have somebody telling me that on the daily. They would tell me at the end of the year. Well, that didn't do me any good.
Yeah, you need to know, like,
I need to
week.
know every week, and that
Yeah.
is what we know now. We look at it every single week, and we are constantly analyzing it and trying to figure out how to make it better. And, we're still somewhat of, I say a fourth quarter business. We just had Easter, and we're busy there, and Mother's Day will be busy, but it's still not like gangbusters every day for the online
Yeah.
and for the wholesale.
Yeah.
Here, we're lucky that we live in a town where our season in Charleston is from March to September. That's a pretty good season.
Yep.
But when October comes, October, November, December, January, February, we have to scale down
Yeah.
and really watch our pennies.
So I'm curious, it sounds like you brought like an accountant in or a consultant to help you.
I brought a controller in.
Controller in to help you with your cost of goods, with your menu engineering, really trying to figure out where every penny is going, how to get the maximum margin from the work you're doing.
Right.
Can you get granular into exactly like what that looked like for you in your business, or is that not your lane?
Well, I mean, it involved him getting down and looking at every single dollar we were spending and watching the process. I mean, we're handmade, so there's some gray area there. It's not a mechanized system. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I had people in place that were supposed to be watching those numbers. Like for the Hot Little Biscuits, we had a district manager that was managing all of them. But, and you got to have the right people on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the restaurants every day that I'm in town. I don't need you to just go. I need you to go in and dig in. Like, how much is this? And if we were to switch to this company, would we save money? And what about this bacon as opposed to this? And I mean, you know, all the things that you would do in a business to try to keep your costs low, that was not happening. And that wasn't just on one person. I mean, I've had, since I started, many district managers. It was rare for that to happen. A lot of that is because there's so many other things going on in the restaurant. You're just trying to keep it open, keep the doors open, keep the employees. You know, we're all working the register. I'm making biscuits. I mean, we're doing what we can to survive.
Yeah. So what was the tipping point? Can you remember? Was there something that when this person? It sounds like your solution was having a specialist come in and help you and guide you. When did the needle really start to move? What was the thing that you started doing specifically?
Well, he started creating projections and margins for every single product that we make, and not just the products, but how we sell them. So, you know, like if we sell on Goldbelly versus our site versus distribution versus individual small retailers, and we have that, everything is analyzed now. Every single thing. Whenever I sell a box of biscuits, and depending on who I sell it to, I know exactly how much money I make. I never knew that before.
Yeah. Any other? Today the business, like we already talked about, is the mail order. It's the brick and mortar. You also have a food truck now. You're doing the catering. You said you are doing wholesale now. There are restaurants buying your biscuits. No,
that would be what we would call food service. Okay. Wholesale is like a specialty grocery store.
Okay.
Distribution is like Publix, Harris Teeter.
You got the
big groceries.
Got it. You got the
Costco
cookbooks. You got your email list that you're pushing to. Paint the picture. Like where is the in priority? Like what's your biggest cash flow down to like your littlest one?
I mean, we make the most money off of the internet.
Got it.
So that is obviously a focus of ours, but that's also there's only so much you can do to control that.
Right. Would you say like 50%? Or like 80?
I don't have that on.
What if you had a guess?
I don't know that I really want to answer that.
Gotcha. So, I mean, what haven't we talked about? Key lessons that you have that you would be able to pay forward?
I think first and foremost, whatever your vision is, know your numbers. I mean, I really wish I'd gotten more involved in the numbers from the beginning, but we couldn't afford somebody like we have now to be able to analyze and advise us on where we should be spending money and where we shouldn't and how we can cut. And that has been incredibly important and educational. Right. It helps make decisions a lot easier when you're making them based on data, not emotion. But I wouldn't trade any of it. I mean, everything that I've done over the last 18 years has taught me something and has helped me grow and has given me opportunities. And, at the end of the day, I think back to why did I start the business? I started it so that I could be in food and be a mom. And I have accomplished that. So to me, it's successful. Do I want to have new goals and have new successes? Absolutely. And I don't know necessarily what the future is going to hold, but I know that we've got some incredible opportunities ahead of us, and I feel like we're barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, and that is one thing I wanted to talk about is where is the business now, and like how are you planning to evolve for the industry or as the industry evolves? Also, like instead of just reacting to what the industry is telling us we need to do, how can we be proactive and create collectively the industry we want? Like how can we go consciously into the future and not do it how we've been traditionally doing it, which I believe is fear-based, reacting to the consumer, reacting to the market, and kind of doing things because we feel like we have to do it. If we don't, we will be in trouble. You know what I mean? So one other thing I wanted to point out, and you kind of resurfaced it, is this idea that you've never sacrificed what you got into the business for in the first place. And I think that is crucial. For you, it's always been about balance. And I think people lose sight of that, especially in this industry. I think collectively as an industry, we can be much better about do I need to make an extra 20,000 this year? Like, is 80,000 profit enough? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you have to know what your goals are. You have to know what gets you out of bed every day. And, I wanted to be able to do both. And that does not mean that I always do that successfully. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are days when, like today, when I am not going to pick up youngest daughter from school, but that's okay. It's okay
Well, thank
to
you for
not.
sacrificing that for my
You're
guys. Thank you
welcome.
very much.
You're welcome. But they also, you're teaching independence. You're teaching, you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
And you're hopefully teaching passion.
Right.
And
it does take a tribe. I think we forget too that like we're a
Oh
part
my
of this
gosh,
community.
yes.
This is why we pay taxes, so we can have school buses and things like this and public services, and it's okay to let you, like you said, to like teach your kids independence and use the system that we all invest in, right?
Yeah.
So where is the future? Like what are you doing with Callie's Hot Little Biscuits to be prepared for where the industry is going?
Well, this is what I know. I'm making biscuit. A lot has changed about our business since we started 18 years ago. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the way that we make the biscuits, and the quality is super important. And I want to make sure that I never lose sight of that. I also don't want to just create things to create things. I want there to be an authenticity associated with it. And I want to be very mindful about how we grow and make sure that I don't spread myself too thin.
What are you doing to
For
prevent
instance,
that? Yeah.
I'm not going to open another Hot Little Biscuit until I find the right partner that is
Yes.
an expert in the industry, that is schooled in scaling and knows how to replicate and knows how to manage.
If you're listening to this,
If you're
and you're
listening,
looking for an
call
opportunity,
me. If
yeah.
you're an expert in
80%,
fast casual grab and
yeah,
go.
80% of our listeners are owners and operators, so there might be a partner out there
Yeah.
for you. One thing I do want to recognize about you is your personal brand. You're really good at, I think, at developing a personal brand. And you don't think so?
No, I mean, I don't really pay much attention to that. I don't think I'm particularly good at that, but thank you for saying
Well, I
that.
feel like we're just going into your store, it looks like every inch of your space is very intentional.
Well,
You're-
yes.
You're displaying your books, you're displaying all of your products. I think when you start digitally, you have to be really good at putting yourself out there digitally and telling a story, email marketing, vlogging, blogging, whatever it is. And it's your story that sold the biscuits. When we go back to Good Morning America, right, where they say you have an amazing story, or when the Food Network, was it the Food Network that came in?
Yeah.
They loved your story. So like just being willing to put your story out there and to make it public and to hire a publicist to help push the story, and just being mindful of how you're, I guess, being interpreted.
Well, I think that it's really easy to do that if you are yourself. And I think that social media has gotten completely out of control.
I'm not saying it. People, I did not plant any seeds. I'm always saying this on the show.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So continue your
But
thought,
I'm
please.
also, I'm old in the social media world, and I've watched it. We were there from the very beginning, and I watch it, and I'm just like, oh my God, it is a rat race, and it angers me. I also have 3 daughters that are completely wrapped up in it, just like all of their peers. So, I know that it's a necessary evil, and it has brought us so much recognition and grown our brand.
What do you mean by out of control?
I just think that everybody is trying to one up the next, and it's just like you feel this need to always post about everything you're doing. I'm going to the bathroom now. I'm going to use this toilet paper. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And I am a part of that. I have made, I am contributing to it. Not as much as I probably should, but that's just because I don't want to do it.
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir.
But you're scared if you don't, that you're going to get lost, and that there's going to be somebody else that's doing something better, and you're going to be forgotten. So I guess my advice and what I tell myself, I go days without posting, and I say I want to post when I want to post about what I want to post. Because that is the true story of me and my brand. Now, my brand is separate than me. It's not Carrie's Biscuits, and that's very intentional, because I don't know that I'd be able to sell Carrie's Biscuits like I can sell Callie's Biscuits.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that for me, I'm not particularly good about talking about
Yourself.
my success.
Got it.
And I can tell you all day about my failures, but I can tell you that my mother, Callie, makes the best biscuits of any person I've ever tasted. And I'm very proud of that, and I truly believe that. And so therefore that gives me the motivation to want to sell them.
Yeah. There was one thing I just remember that I was hoping to talk about, we never did, is that you were a part of a TV show. You had a show that was called How She Rolls.
Yeah.
So was that your idea as another way to promote the biscuits, or again, did somebody approach you?
I've had a lot of people over the years be very complimentary and say, wow, you're so good on camera. You're natural. You know, you should have your own TV show, or you should be on this show. And I'm like, thank you. That's very kind. And I go back to being myself. And I hope that that is probably why I'm, if you call it a natural, I don't know. I did not go after it. I had my publicist ask me, do you want me to try to find a show? And I'd say no, because if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. And it did. One day, literally, a producer called me and he said, I've heard your story and I want to know, would you be interested in me pitching you for a show? And I said, I don't know, what show? And he said, your own show. And I said, again, I don't know that I am worthy of having my own show. And he said, well, what about on the Food Network? And I said, no. And he said, you know, some other names. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, well, what about public television? And I said, I would consider that. Because to me,
that's you.
It was me. It was safe. I was protected. I've always loved public television. I could have my children on it, and I'd feel good about them not only being on it, but watching it. And I feel and have felt this for a long time, that if I can help another female entrepreneur, but really any entrepreneur in their journey, and motivate them and give them the, oh, I can do this too, then I feel like that is the way that I can give back.
When people say they like your story, what is it about your story that they love so much?
I don't know. Probably that I never quit. I don't know.
Yeah. I can get behind that for sure. And just be like, just constantly pushing, but not at the expense of what's most important to you.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, like, I'm not going to forget about why I started it. And it's not about money for me. It is about me feeling successful. Yeah. And that starts every morning when I get out of bed.
Yeah, I love that.
You know? And so just knowing, okay, today I have to make today a good day.
So as we go into the future with all this craziness with social media, I mean, I know you had a 2021, 2022. Is the show still going?
It airs for 6 years. We had 20 episodes.
Wow.
We did season 1 and season 2. And we've gone back and forth. I feel like I've told my story. I feel like it's time for somebody else to tell their story. I don't want to go. I want to go out on a high, not like, oh God, is she still droning on about the biscuits?
So what was your personal mission with the show? Just to get the story out and inspire women? Yeah.
Well, my personal mission was obviously to grow the brand and brand awareness. Obviously, if somebody says we want to do a TV show and it's going to be shown in 96% of the country and you're going to have 1.5 million views and win a Peabody Award, I would have been like, are you joking? That's ridiculous. I was the biggest naysayer. Even when we'd finished wrapping the first season, I was like, this is never going to air. This is crazy. I had no idea.
So what has had the biggest impact on your business between the TV show, the food and wine features, the television features, the Good Morning America, or was it the Today Show? You had
I think it's all been the perfect storm. It's been a great journey, and it's not over. I think that every time we get mentioned, it is a gift.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nothing is greater than the next. I mean, obviously having your own TV show is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's not, it doesn't define me.
Yeah.
And I hope that I inspired people. I hope that I brought brand recognition. I hope that I showed how hard it is and not just showed how great it is.
Right.
Because there's a lot of not great about owning your own business. Yeah. And it's hard.
That's
hard
important
as
to
shit.
me too. I say it all the time. I echo the sentiment. I truly hope I encourage more people out of this industry than I do into it.
Yeah.
Because if I can prevent a couple people from a lot of hard days and nights and lost money and help them get the reality of what it's like to own a restaurant to the point where they're like, maybe I don't want to do this, I think I'm doing them a service.
Yeah, and I think that people think the hardest part is starting, and that is a very hard part. But as you grow, it gets harder and harder and harder. The problems and the challenges are bigger, and they're sometimes not solvable.
Yeah.
And I'm a problem solver, so it's hard for me to not be able to. I want to go to bed at night and go, okay, I checked everything off my list, and I've solved every problem, and that does not happen.
Yeah, we have a question coming for that. so I'm going to sit on it. But I do want to know, the mission statement is to inspire, empower, transform the industry. How have you personally transformed over the now, almost 20 years, 18 years you've been doing this?
As a person,
yeah.
how have I transformed? I think that I have learned to not let everything affect me and sit on it. That comes probably with wisdom and age and experience, but, not being so reactionary.
Yeah.
Sleeping on it for days, not responding, not letting it ruin your day.
Right.
That would be the biggest thing. And, I think surrounding yourself with people, really good people on your team, because I'm just the idea person. And then I have this amazing team of 55 other people that make it happen every day.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that without them.
Carrie, I've loved today's conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to take one more quick break to thank our sponsors, and we're going to bust out a true speed round.
Ready.
We're back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success?
Kindness.
What is your biggest weakness?
Trusting.
How are you overcoming that?
Taking a step back, and these are not one-word answers.
I know.
How am I
Sometimes
overcoming
want more.
that? I know. How am I overcoming that? Just being mindful.
Yeah. What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're growing your team?
Tell me about your integrity.
What are you looking for?
Doing the right thing when no one's looking.
I love that. What is your biggest challenge today?
Figuring out how to scale.
How are you overcoming that?
Exploring new opportunities.
I love it. Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team, a core value, a way to be.
Kindness, always.
What is one way you go above and beyond guest expectation to serve the unexpected?
I teach people to go out of their way to do whatever it takes to make the customer happy. Everybody knows in our company you have full license to give away biscuits, give away kindness, get them to come back, do whatever. Because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to like your biscuit, but they will like the experience.
I love it. What is one thing actually, I just skipped the question. Jared, you know what to do? What is one book that's a must read to make us a better person or restaurant owner?
Setting the table.
Biggest lesson from that book?
Customer service.
What is one thing you feel restaurateurs don't do well enough or often enough?
Customer service.
What is one piece of technology you've recently adopted within your businesses that's had a huge impact on communication, efficiency, profitability, anything along those lines?
Well, this is within building a culture, and it's new, and we love it. It's called Assembly.
Assembly. What is Assembly?
Assembly is like an inner office Instagram for your company. It is a way to communicate, recognize, reward, peer-on-peer recognition and
digitally.
Conversation digitally. It looks very similar to Instagram, and it is flipping awesome.
What is the best feature that you like the most?
I like that I can call people out for doing good and then give them money, or what we call biscuit bucks, and say, you are a badass for doing this. And it can be as simple as stamping the bags without me asking.
It's the ability to publicly recognize.
And not just bosses recognizing employees, but peers recognizing peers, like building that culture where people want to come to work.
What impact has this had on your bottom line? Or some other
Well,
aspect of the business?
it's relatively new. We've only been using it for 7 months, but I hope to be able to say that it will help with retention. That's the reason that we're doing it.
Got it. First time mentioned on the show, too, so thank you for actually. I should make a note so I follow up. Assembly. And this is the last question. It's a doozy. Get ready for it. If you got the news, you would be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants, and your biscuits would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom you could leave behind for the good of humanity and for your legacy. who would those 3 pieces of wisdom be? Think about it, your children. You want to leave your children with 3 pieces of wisdom.
Oh my God.
It's a doozy.
This is heavy. Work hard.
1,
Be kind.
2,
and believe in yourself.
3. This has been a lot of fun, Carrie. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And I didn't call you Callie once. I'm really proud of myself.
I'm so impressed. That might be a first.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
I was so afraid. I was like, I'm going to call this poor lady
You're
Callie.
so kind. No, I mean, it literally happens every day, multiple times a day.
I'm sure. So let me ask you, who do you respect and admire in the industry? If I got this person on the show tomorrow, you'd be like, I got to find out what their perspective is. Who is that person for you?
Well, I would say, and anybody that knows me in the business would say it's Jenny Brittenbauer, just because she's a force and she has built an empire.
Jenny's Ice Cream. She's past guest on the show.
Oh, really?
Yes, I've had her, and you know what? I'm due to get her back. I actually have a friend who lives in Columbus, Ohio now, so I have excuses to go there, and I would love to get her back. She is a powerhouse.
She's a powerhouse.
And it's been almost 5 years since I first had her on the show, so I'm sure a lot has changed.
I think
because she's
so.
constantly improving.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. If we enjoyed today's conversation, we want to follow you in your biscuit journey, and maybe we want an opportunity. What's the best way to connect?
Please visit us at calliesbiscuits.com. Follow us on social media for all the things biscuits and recipes at Carrie Bailey Morey or Callie's Hot Little Biscuit.
And this is episode 994.
Wow.
Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/994. We'll have a summary of today's discussion as well as any links to tools or services recommended on the show and how to connect with Carrie over there. And now is when I say, Carrie, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're a great guest, and there is no questioning. You are unstoppable. Cheers.